Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. I have here author Brian Whitney with us today, and he's got a very interesting story. We're going to go over a few of his books, actually, but the one we're going to be covering today is called Bad Trips. Now, I've heard a little bit about this, and I haven't had a chance to deep dive into it, so I'm going to learn this along with the audience here. It's a really interesting story. I kind of know the big points, the blueprint of the story, but we're going to get down with the details here with Brian. And like I said, we're going to mention some of his other work too and talk a little bit about that. But Brian, first off, man, let's get a little bit of background on you. Where did you grow up?
I live in Maine. I live in Portland, Maine. I've been around here most of my life. Moved away a few times to California and New York, but back being a local now.
Now, what is California compared to Maine? Like, that's a big damn difference. Are you just?
Yeah, it's different. It's different. I live like right. I could hit the ocean with a rock if I had a good arm from my place, and it's like there's a bunch of fun little bars around here and so on. And so the main difference is it gets freezing cold in the wintertime.
Right.
Other than that, like, it's not so bad.
As far as like shit to do and stuff like that, do you prefer Maine, or is California more your speed, or New York? Or
I mean, I love the ocean, but I'm the kind of guy that likes to hang out with his buddies and hit the bars and like just like, mess around. And there's plenty of stuff to do like that around here, believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, I remember, and I've actually got a guy coming on in a couple of weeks. He helped write the Jaws movie. And I was watching the documentary on that. They were running into so many issues with that shark because they filmed that in Maine. They were running into so many issues with that shark. They said Richard Dreyfuss and a lot of the cast would just go out and party because everything was getting pushed back because the damn shark kept fucking up throughout the movie. So they would just go and party like hell all through the town there.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on around here. The colder it is, the more people tend to party, in my experience anyway.
Stephen King territory too, isn't he from up that way?
Yep. Yeah, he is.
He filmed what, Pet Cemetery somewhere up there. It was
filmed, He did. I know some people that are actually in that movie or worked on that movie. Yeah, for sure.
That movie scared the shit out of me as a kid. Like,
is that right?
Yeah, like hands down, like probably one of the scariest movies I think I'd ever seen. At least, I mean, as a kid, it's still scary now, but like as a kid, I remember like trying to go to bed when it was still daylight because I didn't want like to vision any of that at nighttime.
Yeah, no doubt. Where are you at?
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina.
All right. I've always wanted to go down there, man.
It's very pretty. I mean, I live in a town called Darlington, which is about 2 hours from here. It's really known for nothing but the racetrack. Yeah. And that's it. That's about all it is in that town. And I moved here around 2010. And I mean, I love it. It's fabulous. It's a great town. I'm not like downtown. I'm a little bit on the outskirts in a smaller town called Somerville, but not too far from the water, like same thing there. A lot of great bars and stuff to go to. And
very cool.
Yeah. So, cool. Speaking of Stephen King, being an author, when you were coming up, did you have aspirations to be an author? Was writing something you liked, or how did you kind of fall into this line of work?
I used to work, I've always been a writer here and there, but I used to work for the ACLU with prisoners. So I worked with prisoners like in the Northeast. Like I'd go into prisons and visit people who are complaining. And so I kind of got that sort of vibe going on. And then because I like to write, I just started like hooking up with some people that had done some kind of weird things. Some have been in prison, some have been arrested, and I started helping them write some books. So, but it kind of started out that way with me working with some folks that were involved in the criminal justice situation, scenario. And then as time's gone on, the more you do this kind of work, the more money you can make. It's that kind of thing. When you start off, you're broke as a joke, and then you like keep hanging with it. Kind of the similar to what you're trying to do right now too, man. Like you keep hanging with it, and then after a few years, then everyone knows your name.
I've been doing this around like 8 months now. And like I said, we talked a little bit off air before we got started. Like, in the beginning, it's hard when you're first starting out to try to get people to come on and be guests because like you have no background. They don't know really what you're working with, what you're going to bring to the table. And, gradually I was able to get people. And then I reached out to people, basically a lot of it, man, through Instagram. Like I would reach out through Instagram and a lot of people would answer, believe it or not. And it just kind of snowballed. And, you meet the right people and they recommend you to other people. and it kind of goes, you know, from there.
Same exact deal, dude. Like I did one book that did reasonably well, and then I started reaching out to people, you know, as opposed to like, you know, them reaching out to me. Like I was hustling and getting in touch with other people. And so
Exactly.
basically that I've been doing nothing but writing for about 5 or 6 years now. Like
That's good, man. I
writing
mean,
professionally for about 10, you know.
that's the grind, and I respect that, and I respect, you know, everybody's grind and everybody's hustle. Kind of like this interview, I was reached out to. I didn't reach out to anyone. They reached out to me about this topic that we're going to discuss here today, and I was kind of like, you know, I'm just curious, how did you find me? And he said you were trending on the you know, true crime and entertainment portions of the podcast searches, and I was like, well, I guess that's a good thing. So
That's nice, man. Good job.
it is. Thank you. Now we're
You're
going to get into this book today, Bad Trips. Kind of give us the broad strokes here. We'll get into detail, but like the basics of what this is about, because this is a guy that worked for the Vice Network. Is that correct?
Yeah, and like first of all, you got to kind of get in that it happened in Canada, so it's like anything that happens in Canada is going to be like for them like about 100 times more important than it's going to happen here. Like if the same scenario happened in you know, happened in New York City, like, you know, people would know about it, it would make the news. But in Canada, this was like front page news, like for like a year and a half, 2 years. Like he was like everywhere in Canada. Like he's like he's a villain in Canada, basically.
Right.
So his name's Slava Pastuk, Slava P. That's what he goes for. A very cool guy, like very funny guy, very, very fun guy to talk to. Long story short, he's an editor for Vice, which I'm sure you're aware of Vice, but it's a very, very popular website. And he in particular was doing Noisy, which is their rap vertical. They call it a vertical, you know, like so he's doing hip hop and rap stuff. Gets involved in a lot of weird scenes. Like he's dealing a lot of weed, he's throwing a lot of parties, spent a lot of time in New York doing the Vice stuff, hooks up with these guys, kind of giving you the long version, but you kind of have to. Hooks up with these guys that offer him something. They offer him like, you know, 10 grand to like smuggle some cocaine to Australia. He does it, gets back, goes smoothly. Then this is where things get a little screwed up. He starts talking to people.
Well, one second. I want to ask one question on that. How did he smuggle the cocaine? Do you know how he did?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So basically, they go to Vegas first. They meet a guy. There's suitcases that are already like, you know, the drugs are already in the suitcases. You never even sees the drugs. Right. Meet a guy, bring him on the plane, go to Australia, meet another guy, give him the suitcases, get them on.
Now, when you say planes, obviously these aren't like, you know, Delta planes or anything like that. This is what, private plane?
No, they're flying like Delta planes.
How the hell do they get a Coke on a Delta plane?
They're flying like Delta planes. And just to let you know, so like when the guys got busted, it was like $6 million worth of coke. Oh, like, this isn't like a small number.
Right. Well, how do you get that on a plane? Don't they screen shit? I mean, this is post 9/11 for God's sake.
He did get it on a plane, fine, but the other people did not. So like basically,
but how did he do it? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, how do you get that much blood? He picks up the suitcase
and he walks on the plane with it, you know,
and it goes through the scanners and everything.
Goes through the scanners and everything.
Was that his carry-on or was that his?
Yeah.
That was his carry-on.
Carry on, yeah. And,
like nothing to see here, just $6 million in blow. I mean,
I should throw this part in here because this is an important part of it, right? So Vice is known for doing this really gonzo, hardcore kind of journalism stuff. They'll go to other countries, they'll infiltrate, they'll do some bizarre stuff. So according to Slava, a big part of the reason he's doing this is for his story. Like he's doing this because he's gonna smuggle cocaine, and then down the road he's gonna write about his experiences smuggling cocaine.
And I guess making that 10 grand is just icing on the cake there too.
For him, that's icing on the cake in theory. So
yeah, but now looking at that, now I get your opinion on this. You're smuggling how much you say? How many millions?
It was like I just looked it up again because I forget. It was 5 million American, 6 million Australian.
Okay, so I don't know if 10 grand is quite worth $5 million and below if you get caught. I might.
Right, and I can't remember exactly, but I'm not sure if he even knew how much was in there. You know, this is seriously like he's meeting these guys with his friends. They're drinking at a bar. These guys are like, here's what you do. You know, you bring this over and you get 10 grand. you know, and that's it. Like, that's the whole thing. I don't think they were like being like, oh, there's $6 million worth of like cocaine in there.
Right, but
I
geez,
mean, why would they even tell
probably
them
had
that,
to,
you know?
he probably had to peek or something. You gotta go to the bathroom and open it
Nah,
up.
these were like, because when the guys got busted, a big part of it was they were like when they went to Vegas, they said their suitcases looked like crap. They said they could even smell the glue off of them, you know? So these were like suitcases that were like, they wouldn't have had to peek. They would have had to rip apart the whole suitcase.
Oh,
It
okay.
wasn't just in a suitcase. It was like, you know, in a specially designed compartment of the suitcase that
Okay,
someone
I
would
got
have to go out with a knife and like, you know,
So they would have
tear
to
the whole
know
thing
that shit
apart.
was in there.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. That makes a little more sense.
So anyway, so then he comes back after he makes his 10 grand. He goes with a buddy who's a rapper. Makes his 10 grand, and then he starts running his mouth. He would agree with this. Starts running his mouth at parties and other stuff because he's that kind of guy. You know, he's that kind of guy. Like, dude, like, look what I did. I just made 10 grand. Like, you know, we all know a guy like that. Or
Oh yeah,
a lot of us do.
the
He's
loose
that kind of
lips
guy.
sink the ships.
Right. So then he gets the idea that he can like hook these other guys up and he can take a little bit of their money, you know? So he's like, oh, it's 10 grand, but he's telling them it's like 8 grand, you know?
Right.
So it's like, so he's
Clearing
going to pop
2 grand a
2
trip.
grand, and he hooks up with all these dudes. Most of them are minorities. Like, and this is part of the story, you know, because it later comes out, oh, he's this big, you know, successful white dude. He's Ukrainian actually, but he's this successful white dude, like taking advantage of these minorities kind of thing, you know?
Okay.
So anyhow, so they get busted. Like, they go to Vegas, like I said, one of them's like, I could smell the glue off the suitcase. It looked awful. It looked fake. You know, they go through with it anyway. When they get to Australia, someone goes through like, you know, one of the suitcases. 5 of them, they all go to prison in Australia for like 2 to 3 years.
Ooh.
Eventually, Slava gets charged with masterminding the whole thing. He gets 9 years.
So were these guys? There were 5 of them on the same plane, like each of them doing a trip.
Yeah, they were all doing the trip like together.
Okay.
They were all like smuggling in the coke.
Okay,
like,
so he's banging 5 or 2 G's off each guy. He's trying to make another tinker just by sending these guys there.
Right, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, pretty much. And also, you know, he's just that kind of dude that he's always got an angle. Like that's what he does anyway. He's like, when he gets out of prison, like he'll probably be making like 200 grand doing something within 6 months. Like,
Yeah.
you know, he's just that kind of guy, you know. So
Yeah.
So a lot of it's, I think, for the money, but I think a lot of it, he's just that kind of guy that he just always wants, you know, he's just into this kind of, he's into doing stuff that most people wouldn't do.
Well, hell, Vice would probably give him a special or something right off the bat.
Well, no, because Vice, like the book's been optioned, and like it might end up being a movie or a series, but Vice hates him. I mean, they hate him because like they're like, they say he's full of you know, basically full of shit that he said he was doing it for a story, and oh, it's part of the culture of Vice. They just party all the time, and they're like, yeah, you know, I agree with Slava, and he's my buddy, but I mean, just to be fair, Vice is just like, yeah, you completely made that up. Yeah. There's no way that we ever would have like published a story about you smuggling cocaine to Australia and so on and so forth. So they're not buddies anymore at all.
So no sitting back down when he gets out, I guess, with any sort of
no, you know. So yeah, so again, it's like, because it's Canada, it just turned into this huge, enormous situation where this Vice bro, you know, kind of like tricks these like, you know, poor minorities into like, and the thing is, as I already said, he was like his gig was like running the rap, you know. All his friends were black dudes. Like his girlfriend was a man. It wasn't like he was like picking out like minorities. Those are the only people he actually like hung out with.
Those were who he hung out with in the first place.
Right. His roommate was black. His girlfriend was I can't remember what she was, but she was a minority also of some sort. Like most of his friends were black dudes. The guy who went to Australia with in the first place was a black dude. Okay. You know, so like that's definitely not the situation. But he's also like a very again, he's very he likes to push buttons, like he likes to mess with people. So I think that kind of like burned him down the road, you know, like kind of vibe.
Yeah, that can happen if you're that type of people that likes to push people's buttons. If you ever get on the hot seat, then
Yeah,
those kind of things can hurt you later on down
right.
the road. So
No
when he
doubt.
gets busted, that he gets busted in Australia, or that he bust him in Canada? It's in Canada.
The guys that were smuggling, they all got busted in Australia. They went to
Right.
prison in Australia. They all turned around, for lack of a better term, and ratted on him.
Right.
Some people don't like the word rat, but to me, like, that's kind of the term for it.
It
So
is what it is.
they ratted on him. He never ratted on the people that were above him in it. Like those people that were the people that were running the whole thing, they've never been touched. Like
Right.
they're still like, I assume probably still doing the same thing now.
Oh yeah. Well, there's
But
probably
he,
reasons
yeah,
why
so,
they haven't been touched, I would imagine.
yeah. So he didn't like turn on them, but the people that he hooked up turned on him. So he ended up getting indicted and arraigned in Canada, probably like 2.5 years. And he got 9 years, but he's going to be out in 2 weeks. Like he probably only did 2.5 years. Canada's a different animal. And
Right. We interviewed a guy named Brian ODay. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not.
Name sounds familiar.
He's from Newfoundland.
Okay.
That's where he grew up, but he smuggled 75 tons of pot in 2 boat trips.
Okay.
And he was from Canada, and he done like 25 tons on one trip. And one of the members of his crew actually got caught, flipped on him that they were gonna do another load of 50 tons. Well, they get word that this guy flipped.
Okay.
And so they know that they're being watched, but the FBI don't know that they know, so to speak.
Right.
So they buy an entirely different boat, unbeknownst to them. They cut this guy out of the operation. They buy an entirely different boat, but keep the one they had. They send that boat early, the new one. Then they go on the regular boat like normal, like they're going to do this drop. So that's the boat everybody's focused on. Meanwhile, they're almost like passing each other in the fucking ocean coming back. The boat is loaded with pots passing them. They're going over there. They hang out for a little bit, bullshit. They come back. They're like midways back, and he's like, everybody comes. It's the fucking FBI, every Coast Guard, like everybody. They swarm the boats, and there's like nothing on the boat. He left like coffee and donuts downstairs for him when they got there. Super pissed. He wound up getting caught later on down the line. It was for that, but not like during that. Other people started rolling, kind of like this situation. The lower end people get busted. They roll on the higher end guys. And he'd done a few years in prison also, but he's been out. He does a lot of podcasts. He wrote a book called High Times. Yeah. And I mean, he's got a pretty interesting story too, but you're right. Canada is the way they do their prison stuff over there is a lot different than the US. So he's only done what, like 2.5 years?
Yeah, 2.5 years and a 9-year sentence. And after a year, he was out doing like Habitat for Humanity stuff, and could be out in the community doing things. And so I was talking about playing mini golf and watching TV and things like that, while he's in there. He's not
that doesn't sound like the prisons over here in the United States. I say that.
Yeah, no, not quite. So yeah, he's gonna be out in a few weeks. And again, it's like the story itself is a really cool story, even if you didn't have the vibe. It's also a story of like rap culture, Vice itself, what was going on at the time, which was kind of when Drake was coming up in Toronto and so on and so forth. But that's where he's based in. Basically, it was Toronto. It's an enjoyable read. I'd recommend. I wouldn't even honestly say that about like everything that I've worked on. This is actually an enjoyable read. It's like
well, it caught my attention. Yeah, right off the bat, when I kind of heard the basis, I mean, anything like that, it's like, somebody set out to investigate something, and before you know it, they're involved in what they're investigating. And that's something that I think is very plausible that anybody could fall into. I mean, you take any regular Joe, just say if you're an investigative journalist and they say, all right, go, investigate and, whatever part of town. I'll just say New York, for example, like we'll do drugs, investigate the drug trade in there. And you see your job is to find out how much these people are making, how much they're, clearing per load. It would be very easy to just say, damn, that looks like some easy money. These guys are making $5 grand, not doing nothing. I mean, I can see where that temptation would be there for him for sure.
Yeah, and especially if you're already involved in that sort of culture in the first place, where like he was selling marijuana for like a very very long period of time, like when
Right.
he was in Toronto. So for him, it wasn't like that big of a that big of a leap, I
Yeah.
would say.
Now, when did I mean, how did the relationship between you and him come about? Did he reach out to you? Were y'all already friends? How did
Yeah,
that?
I mean that was like, so I do a lot of like actual ghostwriting where like someone will pay me like an amount of money to do a book and my name's never on the book, so on and so forth. Then there's
Right.
guys like him that I actually I had communicated him with him once. Like he had written like a publisher I was working with, so I'd known him a bit. And then when I saw what happened to him, I just like reached out and dropped him an email, which his mom answered because he was in prison. So same kind of thing we were talking about, where like I actually did the hustle around this particular situation. And also because he's in Canada and he's a prisoner, like he actually can't profit, off the book. So like
Right.
he needed he needed somebody to work with. He's a very good writer. And in actuality, I don't think he would have like needed me to do this, but in the concept of like, it's kind of like a Son of Sam Law kind of
That's what
vibe.
I was going to ask, and break
Yeah.
that down for people. And hell, I even want to know the Son of Sam law is you yourself can't profit from your crimes.
Yeah, and what's funny is when I said to you before, like I worked with a guy that has to do with the Son of Sam case as well. But
Right.
yeah, so basically, if you commit a crime, and I'm not completely clear, like Canada is more strict than we are with this stuff. I believe in America, it's definitely like murder. If you rob banks or something, I believe you can profit off of that in America, but I'm
Right.
not entirely sure. But I know you, like if you kill somebody and you want to write your story about, oh, this is my life and how I became a killer, like you can't make a dime off of it. So in Canada, it's the same vibe. Like even for something like drug offenses like this, like he can't make any money off of it. So like with this and the book getting optioned for film and all that, like if there was like if he were to write it himself without having a partner in it, and we have an agent that I've worked with for years too that like set it up, like it wouldn't even be allowed to happen. So
Well,
so my
so
role in part is to pal.
if you do it, then you're allowed to profit,
I can get money from it,
and then
but he cannot get money from it.
legally.
You had to do the wink wink nudge nudge thing there,
Yeah.
but yeah,
So
like,
that's what I was getting at. Like, he can't write this story. And one of the things that comes to mind with this whole thing, when you just broke that down for a book and a movie, is George Young, the character from the movie. Well, not character, he's a real guy, but the movie Blow. You ever
oh
seen?
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So he was in jail. He was in was I forgot which prison he was in. Um Otisville, I think it was, when he done his long stretch. So
Yeah.
he couldn't profit from the book if he wrote it. But being that Bruce Porter wrote the book, then Bruce could make the profits. And then Bruce's book got optioned into a movie, obviously, that was done by Ted Demme, starring George Young, as we said, and Ray Liotta. So they can profit from that, but technically,
The
George can't.
criminal themselves cannot profit from it,
Right.
and that's like something that, and everyone's going to be like, in a situation like that, it's going to be like, oh well, obviously, like technically nudge nudge, but it is just like what it is, like,
Yeah.
he can't profit from it, and that's that. So he's also, like I was saying before, like a big part of the reason he's doing this is not to make money off this per se. He wants to like continue like his career. He already was a writer in the public eye, so this is more like showing his chops, getting his book out there, keeping himself in the public eye, and then like once he gets out, like in a few weeks, like he can start doing some other things as well.
Right.
You
And
know,
that makes sense. I mean, you keep your name out, even if you don't make anything of this story, then, you might could have appearances or something like that where you're going to pay you under the table or whatever the case may be. Speaking of Vice, we had a guy on the show and he was actually like our third guest, I think. And I'd seen his story a long time ago. It was actually on Vice.
okay.
A man named David Gantt.
Yep.
and he robbed the Loomis Fargo in Charlotte. I think this was in like 98. It was like the bank that supplied the banks, basically. So it wasn't like tellers or anything like that. And he was the manager. So when he was supposed to close, he'd already had been planning this thing in his head. He just fucking loaded up a van with every bit of money he could fit in the van.
Yep.
Left, went to a rendezvous, had some people that he were working with. Probably not the smartest plan in the world, but dropped the money off with them. He
Right.
went to Atlanta, took a flight from Atlanta to Mexico, and the plan was for them to mail him the money over there. They didn't do that. They actually hired a fucking hitman to go to Mexico to kill him.
All right.
And liked him, actually got to be fond of him and didn't want to kill him. And it was a crazy story. It was optioned to a movie, and it became a movie called Masterminds that had Zach Galifianakis in it.
Yeah, I've never seen that, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the real guy about all that is David Gantt, and that's what me and him talked. And he's like, technically I can't profit from this. He said I still owe the IRS. Like he said, some kind of ungodly amount. And he said every now and again they'll call him and be like, when are you going to pay this? And he's like, look, if I paid you the minimum, it would take me like 144 years to pay you off. So you can probably guess when I'm going to pay it. Like it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, man. I mean, obviously this is the first time I've been in this situation, so I don't know like how hardcore people all get worried about that kind of thing, as far as how things roll. But it's yeah, like but above the board, above the books, I'm profiting from it. The agent's profiting from it, Slava doesn't
get. You guys are doing the work. I mean, you should see, some sort of profit. You're putting in the legwork for it. And that's like, same thing with him. He said that Vice would call him down, or Fox, or whoever would call him down. And technically, like I said, they couldn't pay him for it, but they're flying him down there. They're taking him out to a nice dinner. They send him back to a nice, 5-star hotel. And there may or may not be something in the dresser drawer when he gets back to the hotel. Who knows? But that's the type of thing. That's how it has to roll because of that Son of Sam law. And I've always been curious on exactly how that, that fine line was. And that's pretty interesting because, like I said, you're keeping the story alive, but when he gets out, he can kind of keep he can keep his name in the light in certain areas. So kind of keep that.
Right. And again, I'm not like, in fact, after we get done talking, I think I'm going to look at, there was a time at one point that I was talking to a guy, Robert Chambers, who was the preppy murder guy. I don't know if you remember that. That was forever and ever ago. Yeah. The guy that he was having supposed quote unquote rough sex with this woman, and he strangled her outside on the street. This dude was this really good looking dude with a lot of money. And anyway, he'd been in prison for a long time. And I was talking to his girlfriend, because a lot of these guys have girlfriends. Yeah. And for a while I thought about doing it, but that was just so I was with something like that, with someone like Slava, who's honestly a nice dude, who's just kind of quirky and made some mistakes.
Yeah.
Versus some guy that literally strangled a woman to death on the street. Yeah. So I mean, I think the Son of Sam law is more. So I bailed on that, because I was just I don't even want to play around with that.
Well, those two movies, what you just said, Slava's movie and the Preppy Murder movie. Now, I'm a big movie person, so I would probably see both, but I can see where a lot of people would be gravitated towards the Slava story and maybe not so many towards the Preppy Murder. That's just going to piss them off.
Yeah, without doubt. And as I said, it's been option 1, and then 2. There's a doc that's going to be on bought by Amazon that's coming out in the spring about Vice and about that time period. So that's going to be mentioned a lot too. So the book should have legs, between those two. The option stuff, man. Not to get nerdy and talk about the business, but the option stuff and the movie stuff is really where it's at, in this particular thing. It's people will pay it. They'll option. I have a book out right now that's been optioned for 3 straight years and no one's ever done anything with it. The same company options it year after year. They're oh, we'll option this again. And it's another $10,000, just in case they do it. And they don't. But it just it's a lot of money these people are just throwing around.
So they throw you $10,000 to hold it?
Yeah, the option itself, like there's the option first, and then if it actually gets made, it's almost two separate. Like, so here's 10 grand for the option. If we make it, we'll give you like 200 grand or something like that. So a lot of times these things get optioned, and they never ever see the light of day. These people just option it, so that's pennies to them. 10 grand, you know, not a big deal.
So when they option something to you, you can't take any offers from anyone else. Is that
right?
Kind of
exactly.
Like
then they control the product for as long as they want to control the
okay.
As long as they want to control the product. So
yeah, like, this is interesting to me. I've always heard those terms. Yeah, the book's been optioned for a movie, but you don't actually know what that means. Like,
no, it sounds good. It sounds cool to say, you know. So it's like I'll say it like. I'll say it if I have a book that's been optioned, I'll mention it like so many times because like all of a sudden people are like, "Ooh, it's been optioned." Sometimes I've optioned stuff before for like nothing. Sometimes people are just like, no one wants the book, and like someone will option it for like no money. Like if we can get it made, then you'll make like how much, and then they never get it made. But like people option stuff like all the time. You know, if you have an interesting story, like it's I mean it's hard, but to get something optioned, but compared to like how many movies get made and how many get optioned, I mean, it's got to be like 1,000 times more get optioned than actually get made.
And that's the thing is like, I go to Walmart sometimes and I'll scroll through the DVD section. Obviously, you know, you have your mainstream hits that come out, but then you have these ridiculous looking fucking movies that you think of like, what possessed anyone to think like this would be a good idea to make?
Right. I don't know, man.
Stories like Slava's and guys like Brian ODay and another guy, interesting character named Tim McBride that we've had on the show. I don't know if you're aware of who he is or not, but he wrote a book. He wrote a book called The Saltwater Cowboy, The Rise and Fall of the Marijuana Empire. And he was just a big time drug smuggler from an island in Florida. He dealt with like Noriega. He moved tons for years and years and years until he finally got caught. I think it was like in the early 90s he got caught, and he done like 6 years in prison. He's got a real interesting story. It's on our show. We actually broke it into 2 parts because we almost talked for like 3 hours.
Gotcha.
I mean, like story would make the book was fantastic. The story would make a great movie. And I'm like, how does shit like Jack-o'-lantern and like these ridiculous movies I see at Halloween, like this killer pumpkin, get made? Like, who finances that shit when there's a lot better stories?
I mean, and how it gets into Walmart is even weirder, you know. It's like I know people that have done movies and got like maybe a $50,000-$60,000 budget and put the movie. They don't get to Walmart, you know. They're like,
maybe we get it on Amazon or something, like a streaming or something. Somebody buy it for like $1 or even free, put it on Prime. But yeah, like get a full-blown movie DVD and released in Walmart. I'm just like,
I mean, honestly, we're just shooting the shit right now, but it's the same thing with my business, man. It's like people come at me with like the most ridiculous ideas. They're like, "Oh, dude, this is gonna be like a bestseller, man." It's like if I'm even out at I don't even like to tell people what I do, you know, because it's like it's like people are just like, "Oh, like, you know, this will be a bestseller, man. Like this is gonna be huge," and then they tell you the story, and it's like are you like kidding me, man? It's like,
I'll tell you about this car wreck I had. It'll make a great book.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's like a YouTube segment, pal.
But the movie's even sadder because it takes them that takes me so much time to like an effort to produce something like Jack-o'-lantern, like you said. I don't know. I don't get it either.
Yeah, I see that shit and I just shake my head because I'm looking at the premise and it's like 15 different ripoffs of a bunch of different movies. And a lot of them are horror movies because I know people just like horror movies in general. But I mean, just how some of that stuff gets made, who finances it. Like it made me want to buy the movie just to look into like what production company forked out cash for this, because I might can contact them and say, hey, you bought or you done this piece of shit. Let me direct you to something that might actually make you a few dollars.
Right. No, totally, man. I completely agree.
Now, not only about, and when is this book coming out?
It's coming out April 5th in Canada, and it's coming out May 1st in the States.
Okay, now have you guys planned, like, is it just going to be a hardcover? You're going to have it on Kindle, audiobook? What all?
It's going to be hardcover, Kindle, audio, paperback. Again, it's like one of those things in Canada. They're expecting to be a bestseller in Canada. It's like it's an odd situation in that sense because, you know, it's like up there. He's a very hated individual, or at least a well-known individual. And like, here you mentioned his name, and he gets kind of peeved about that because he wants nothing more than to he wants to be hated in America. It's he wants people in America to despise him too, but no, most people don't. They don't know who he is.
Right.
So yeah.
I don't know about despise. I mean, some people probably just think it's cool. I don't know about despise.
If he comes on your show, you'll see he's an interesting cat.
Well,
It's tongue in cheek, but he enjoys messing with people. He enjoys pissing people off.
Well, that sounds like a crime and entertainment guest for sure. He's more than welcome to come on and shoot the shit here like you and I. Now, not only do you have this book out that I'm looking forward to reading it because I kind of want to hear the story. Because like I said, I think this story is very relatable. And I think a lot of times when people pick up a book, they want to be able, and the same thing with TV shows and movies, they like to relate to the characters that they're seeing. Oh, I would do that if I was in his spot, or, I understand why he did this or that, whatever it is. And that's something like I spoke earlier, that if you were put in that position, there's probably not very many people that wouldn't do what they did or what he did. I mean, it's hard. It would be hard to turn down, man.
I mean, it depends on where you're at, right? It's like there's been times in my life that I definitely would take 10 grand to do something like that.
Oh yeah.
100%. There's been other times in my life there'd be no way I would.
Yeah. Now I'm established. I got a family and kids and stuff like that. Yeah, 10 grand ain't gonna cut it now. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I believe he was 20. I believe he was 24. When he did this.
That would have been a 50-50 back in my early 20s.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
I probably would have negotiated. I need 20. I need 25.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But other than this book, you actually have a few other ones that I wanted to mention, because one of them, the title kind of caught me, and I got to get a little bit more information on this. And I hope I don't butcher it, because the Cannibal Cop.
That's all right, because that's the one. See, that's the one that I actually started with. We talked about that. So this case is actually really bizarre, So
yeah, I read the cliff notes there.
I'll give you the cliff notes. It won't take me long to explain, but it's still bizarre.
Absolutely.
There's a documentary called Thought Crimes on HBO about this case. So basically, he's a cop, hence the name. He's in New York. He's a New York City cop. He's married, and he has fantasies about kidnapping and eating women. With me so far.
Oh, so I'm here.
So he gets on something called the Dark Fetish Network, DFN. Right.
Kind of like the dark web type thing.
It's an internet fetish site for people with really, hence the name Dark Fetish Network.
Right.
He starts writing a bunch of his pals on there about his fantasies of kidnapping and eating these women. We're going to kidnap him. We're going to chloroform him. We're going to put him in our van. We're going to take him to the basement. We're going to put him in our a life-size oven, an oven big enough to put a body in, and so on and so forth.
The fuck out of here!
I'm laughing because I'm looking at your face as I'm talking about this. I'm going to get to the good part. This isn't even the good part. So he's putting up photos of people he knows in real life from Facebook, including his wife, on these sites. And so eventually his wife finds him doing this on the internet. She goes to the FBI and goes my husband's planning on kidnapping me and potentially cannibalizing me. He gets arrested for conspiracy to kidnap. He gets convicted. He goes to prison, and then he gets exonerated and he gets let out. Because this is all fantasy. He didn't have a van. He didn't have a big oven in his basement. He didn't have any way to do any of the plans that he was.
So it was just a fantasy
that he was talking about. So it's a bizarre case, man. As I can tell you, because he was completely innocent, but no one likes him anyway.
So he never actually went through with it. This was all just deep, dark-seated fantasy.
He never did anything, right? Exactly. He never did anything. He just kept talking about all the weird stuff that he wanted to do.
Well, so now let me ask you this. When he put his picture of his wife up there, was he saying that was going to be one of his victims? Did he say it was his wife?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. That's why that's why all this, like, it would be like some woman he went to college with or some woman he knew. So if he didn't do that, none of this would have ever happened. But he was putting photos up of real life people that he knew. And if his wife never went through the computer, like she thought he was having an affair or something because he was on the computer late at night all the time.
She's going through the search history thinking there's going to be some Pornhub or something on there and finds.
Yeah, it was a lot worse. Yeah, it was a lot worse.
Oh, God almighty.
Yeah. So anyway, that was like how I kind of, believe it or not, got into the biz. Because like when I was fascinated with the case because it's like it's a civil rights case to the T. You know, it's like it's reprehensible, it's awful, it's bizarre, but you still got a guy in prison that didn't do anything. You know.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating to me in general, and it was huge news, especially around New York. But it was
now, when did this take place?
Man, I think it was about 10 years ago. Like, if you Google it though, it's still like all sorts of hits.
Wow, that needs to be a fucking full-blown episode in itself, right there.
Yeah, no, like he's.
So what's he doing now?
I don't think he promotes his stuff anymore. Like he actually
I probably wouldn't either, but I just mean to say I wouldn't do it if I was him. But I just a subject in general.
He actually wrote three horror books based around like this kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So how long did he do in prison before he got exonerated?
I think he was there like, I can't remember exactly, but it was like 2 or 3 years.
How long did they give him? Do you know what they originally gave him? Sentence-wise?
Like 15 or 20 years or something like that.
15 to 20?
Yeah, well, they got him for like conspiracy to kidnap, you know. It was like, and more than one count. It was like quite a few counts because he did
it. So they counted him probably for every person that he posted up that he was going
to. Yeah, he did it with a whole bunch of different people, and he would create these big stories about what they were going to do. And
I don't know. I mean, that's definitely interesting because that's a gray area because like you can conspire to kill somebody. And then if they catch you before it happens, then that's still conspiracy. But, you know, give him this kind of thing. Like you said, he was doing all this extra stuff, saying about a van and putting them in an oven. Like, obviously, that stuff.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's kind of the point, right? So, like, if you're, and it is a huge gray area. But if you and I are emailing each other and being like, oh yeah, let's go kill this guy, and you're being like, oh yeah, well, I'm right outside his house right now, and I got the cuffs, and I got like the van running, and then in reality, you're like at home in your basement, like eating Cheetos, like not doing any of that stuff. Yeah. Like, are you really conspiring, or are you just bullshitting? You know, so it's like, it is complicated, and he, you know, he's very. The interesting part is too, there's all sorts of women, there's all sorts of interesting parts. But one interesting part is now he gets contacted by women like all the time that like want to like, you know, that like want to hang out with him and want to like do this and that. We did a book signing at Crime Con like one time. Like we went to Crime Con, which is this big, like it was in New Orleans. It was like Crime Con's big. So we did this and like we did a book signing. I just like sat in the corner while these women were like, I'm not kidding, like handed him like their phone numbers and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's like, probably somebody I'm gonna have to pass on right there.
Yeah, it's really weird, man.
Dude, it's crazy. Like I was gonna say, it's crazy that some of these people, when they're in jail for this, like, you know, committing crimes and killing multiple women, the women that just flock to them and send them fucking, you know, fan mail and offer to marry them and shit like that.
That actually happens. Yeah, that actually happens a lot. Yeah, it's very weird. With Gil, I think it's more the fact that like there's women with this opposite sort of like sexual fetish that like, you know, he has. But yeah, that's very odd to me also. It's a common thing. It's a common thing that these guys get all sorts of letters and people like they get married in prison and so on and so forth.
That's crazy.
Let me ask you a quick question just because I'm curious, because I know like what about Jay Dobbins? I know he was just as I mentioned to you, like I'm writing a book right now with Jay, who wrote No Angel, like undercover, like, you know. I got
No Angel back here somewhere.
Yeah. Somewhere. So I'm writing it with him and three other undercover ATF agents, like all of them about murder for hire schemes. There's like 4 different ATF agents, like each one that was like involved with and Jay's a trip. Like he's like he's a funny. He's a funny dude.
Yeah, our episode, I think it was close to 3 hours. It was like 2.5 hours. And I had seen a lot of his stuff on like the History Channel and the Gangland type thing and stuff like that. And I listened to a few podcasts, but I had never heard like the end result, because the whole thing was Operation Black Biscuit. And when they pulled the plug on it, basically, I guess he had to do a lot of things that he kind of had to do to get by and to get through with his cover story. And I think that kind of hurt the case. They didn't maybe get as many convictions as they wanted out of it for as long as maybe they wanted. But the ATF just basically hung his fucking ass out to dry.
Yeah.
Like just fuck. He said, like, you know, after it was over, and I used that as a snippet on one of our advertisements for the show. He said he bumped into a Hell's Angel, and the guy just straight out told him, he's like, you know, you're never gonna get away from us. Is that one of these days your kid's you're gonna be at the school bus to wait on your boy to get off, and he's not gonna get off, and you think about that he's with us and what we're doing to him. Yeah. I was like, Jesus Christ. And I mean, you know, obviously that's him saying it. So I'm taking it at his word. But then not long after that, you know, his house burns down. And he's thinking, all right, well, ATF's got to do something for me now. You know, my house is burnt down. So he goes to him and he's like, look, I told you they were coming after me. What are you guys going to do? And they wind up looking into him for burning his own damn house down.
Yeah, none of these guys are huge fans of the ATF at this point, I would say. I can believe
it. And that's what I asked him. I'm like, how do you feel about the ATF? I'd probably have to hate the ATF worse than I did the Hells Angels at that point. Because, I mean, at least when the Angels thought you were with them, they probably showed you some kind of loyalty. Like ATF's just basically fucking kicked you out. Like you're done. You're, you know, hey, it is what it is. Good luck.
Yeah, and that kind of scenario too, where you're like, you know, these guys are like, one of the 4 guys, won't say his name and it wouldn't matter anyway. This is a book now that we were just shopping. We did a proposal and we're shopping it, but one of these guys, like he's undercover, like he's basically hiding out like somewhere kind of down near where you are, in the same general area, like he infiltrated like motorcycle gangs and Hells Angels and stuff. And, like they did do right by him in context like now, but that's still like a hell of a way to live. Just sitting there like somewhere under a different name, like
you got to go into hiding and. You know, I mean, and so I talked to Jay about it, and he kind of went like, there's another guy, I don't know if you're familiar with his story, but he infiltrated the Mongols. His name is Billy Queen.
Yeah.
And so Billy is like pretty much off the radar. Like he's done a few things, but in large part, he's not as visible as Jay. Jay just kind of had the mindset of like, you know, I'm not going to hide. I'm just going to put myself out front. And if you're, you know, got the balls enough to kill me and risk being, you know, linked to it because I'm standing out here in front of everybody telling the story, then it is what it is. So he kind of took the opposite approach. I'm not going to hide. I'm just going to be as open and as, you know, plain view as I can to hope it deters them from doing something.
Yeah. He's a funny dude.
I mean, I enjoyed our show. I had contacted him back when I first started this, because there was like a number of people that I knew that I was like, hey, I want to get their story. And when I reached out to him, it was right around the time of football season. That's what he's doing out in Arizona. He's coaching, you know, high school football.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll reach back to you, you know, around the end of the year, first of the year, when football season's over and you got some free time. And I did. And we set it up. And, you know, he was a fantastic interview. Like I said, I have his book and, you know, been knowledgeable of the story, but not all the way to that extent about what the ATF did to him after the fact. That was pretty crazy. And you're working now book with a couple of those guys, like 4 ATF agents?
Yeah, well, one of them, I did a book that just came out. It's called Storefront Sting. This guy's name is, actually, I should mention that because if he sees this, he'll be like completely pissed off. But like I'm talking about Jay's book, and like, because he and Jay are buddies. His name's Lou Velozzi. He wouldn't be a bad dude for your show, honestly. But I've seen
him. I've seen that book. I've seen it.
Yeah, what he did, this book just came out. And this has also been optioned. So like, this is another thing that I'm talking about, right? So like, this book just came out, and about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. His vibe was that he did in Savannah. He lives in Savannah now, but like most of this was in your area, like general area.
Yeah.
So, basically, what they would do, particularly Lou, they would start a place, like I'd say it's a tattoo shop, but it's not a tattoo shop, right? So they're doing it like it's a tattoo shop, but it's really a front for guns drugs, so on and so forth. So all these people are coming in to this fake tattoo shop, which is this is the vibe of it though that makes it kind of interesting, because it is a fake tattoo shop, but they think it's a fake tattoo shop to do all their business around guns and drugs, but really it's being run by the ATI. Right. So like Lou would do this like after this would close, and it'd start like a another business in another city that was maybe like one of them was this kind of like a used, like I'm trying to think of the word, like a surplus store, like an army surplus store kind of thing. So these guys come in and they do this and they do that, but like it's really just like a front. And then they'd eventually bust like 100 guys, and then they'd go like do it like someplace else.
Yeah, do it again.
You know, where like every day they're sitting there like around like 50 different dudes, like planning on busting them for all these guns and drugs and so on and so forth, and going home to sleep with their wife and kids, and then coming back and doing this shit again. It's crazy, man. I honestly can't. We talk about like Slava, like going to like taking 10 grand to go to Australia. I can see, depending on the amount, I could see doing that. I have no way I would do like any of this shit that these guys are like doing. Like no way in hell. Like seriously.
Well, and also the same way, like I said, that I can see where, you know, the money for the 10 grand would be tempting. I can also see where doing things like what Jay did, you lose yourself.
Right.
In your case. Like, you know, at what point in time could any dude, and I gotta classify this with dudes because women wouldn't be included in this, but like if you're able to put on a cut and ride a Harley and everybody fears you and you're with these people and you're partying and you're making money, and you know, like that's appealing to a certain extent. Like, you know, you have to do violence and, you know, commit crimes. That's another thing. But, you know, to have that patch and to have that cut, that's a big fucking deal to a lot of people. Like that's not just a piece of cloth, you know, to those guys.
No, I hear you. And Lou's thing, like Lou's bigger than Jay. Like he's this enormous dude. It's like also played football in college, tatted right up.
Yeah, I've seen him. Like, so I've seen that book you're talking about.
He wasn't doing the gang thing per se, but I mean, it's still like this. He's working his way in with these people, like, you know, day after day, over and over and over again. Like, just it's crazy shit. He also did a murder for. He's one of the 4 guys that also was hired to do a murder for hire thing. Like, the whole point of the book is like none of them actually happened, but 4 different cases of undercover murder for hire things. But Lou's a cool dude. He'd be good for your show if you're ever looking for somebody.
Absolutely. I would definitely. I'll get his contact info after we get off for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd seen his name in research and different things, so I'd look at up under other cases, kind of like that. And you know, that stuff's always interesting to me. I actually had a guy last week, now his episode hasn't dropped yet, but he's seen the J Dobbins interview with me, and he reached out to me and he's like, hey, check out some of my work. I'm a former ATF, and his name was, I don't want to butcher his name, but Ignacio Esteban.
Okay.
And he was in it for like 25 years. And he's also a writer, and he's got a shitload of books. And that's what struck me kind of odd was he's got a book about mafia families. He's got a book about 1%ers. He's got a book about prison gangs. He's got a book about Putin. He's got a book about China and the communist stuff they got going on over there. Then he's got like scenic books, and then he's got a children's book that he wrote with his kid. And I was just like, I was like, is this real? Is this the same guy? But it was, and, very interesting cat. I'll probably have him back on for sure. And his episode will probably come out in a week or 2, but definitely an interesting guy for sure. Those ATF guys have a lot of stories.
Yeah, man. No, without a doubt. I was actually going to say that was like talking to Jay. Like, so when you do this kind of business, not to be boring about the work I do, but it's part of like this, you know, it's part of the shit that like, when I'm talking about this stuff, that's the way I think about it. So with Jay, like we're doing a proposal, right? Which has a sample chapter. So Jay's the sample chapter. So like writing Jay's chapter is just like, all I have to really do is like listen to him talk and tape record. You don't even really have to do anything. The guy's just like, the stories he tells are like just wild. Lou's the same way. I mean, for someone like me, like all I basically have to do is tape record it, like change shit up here and there. But it's like it tells themselves, like those guys are like, the stories are amazing. Seriously.
Yeah, he's a very good storyteller. I mean, even the story, I don't know if you've ever heard, you know, our show or him talking about it, but even before he got in with the Hells Angels, like he was like his first week on the job and he got shot. you know, and he was just like, I haven't even gotten a paycheck yet. And here I am about to die. And I asked the nurse, like, you know, what are my chances? And she's like, I'm not good. And that's not good, honey. And he was just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
You need to lie.
Right off the bat. Yeah.
Now, one other book I wanted to mention, you kind of alluded to it earlier, The Son of Sam. Now, that's a documentary on what, Netflix?
Yeah, it's called Sons of Sam. So this book,
yes, plural, because that's the whole deal. Is there was more than just Berkowitz.
The point of it is Berkowitz. There's a guy named Maury Terry, and he wrote a book called The Ultimate Evil, and it kind of puts out the whole theory that Berkowitz didn't act alone. He was part of, like, you know, back in the day, everyone was all about the satanic cult shit. So like a bunch of this is like has to do with that.
Yeah.
But at the same point, so the guy I worked with, his name's Carl De Niro. The book's called Son of Sam and Me. Carl is a friend of Maury. Carl was shot in the head by, like, you know, he's sitting in a car making out. He left a bar with his chick. They're making out. He's got like bottle of Jack Daniels, and like he literally gets shot through the car window, like in the head. He doesn't see who shot him. He goes back to the bar, believe it or not. Like they take off. Like he's like go because the woman's driving. They don't know where to go, so they go back to the bar. He walks in the bar, and like they're like, dude, like what is going on with you? And he just had like blood, like, you know, all over his head. So they take him to the hospital. He still doesn't even know he was shot in the head. He just thought like the glass exploded. So anyway, the story of the book is mostly about, one, his search for who shot him and his relationship with Maury Terry. And so yeah, the Netflix doc came out called The Sons of Sam. Carl's in the doc. It's kind of polarizing, this whole thing. A lot of people are just like, what, are you kidding me? Berkowitz obviously did this. Like, if you don't know anything about the case, or if other people don't, like 7 or 8 people killed, like Berkowitz, like he basically claimed that he's completely mentally ill, and a talking dog told him to do it, you know, like Sam's the dog. And there's like, you know, and then there's another group of people that go like, no, like, you know, he was part of an organized ring of people doing this stuff. He's just saying all that shit about how crazy he is because, like, that's the way to, like, for no one else to find out that all these people like were involved in it, you know, because the case closed. Oh, it's just a lone lunatic. No one else is involved. So I think it's a 5-part Netflix doc. The book itself is a good book. Son of Sam and Me. Yeah, interesting case for sure.
Yeah, well, that's a crazy. Even without getting into that aspect of it, the Son of Sam itself, crazy tale. There's been a movie. I think Spike Lee did a movie.
Yeah, there's been a few. Yeah.
John Leguizamo played a part in there. I don't know the guy that played Berkowitz. I don't know if he was like a well-known actor or not, but he played it very well. He kept like he was hearing the voices and he was trying not to. But Berkowitz's backstory in itself was a little crazy. I think he was like, what was he, adopted or something with his mother? He had like a real strange relationship with his mother.
He was adopted. He did have a weird relationship with his mom, and like in theory, he set a bunch of fires when he was younger. When I say in theory, it's all pretty much proven, but like, you know, I can't say for sure. But like, set a bunch of fires and so on and so forth. Definitely kind of a crazy guy. Is like no doubt about it. But there's all sorts of different evidence, like here and there, that just point to the fact that almost certainly somebody else was involved. And Carl would tell you 1,000% someone else was involved, you know.
I mean, the only thing I can say to that is it's hard for people to keep secrets for long periods of time.
Yeah, I hear you.
And if they have, then they've done a good job, because that's kind of would be like up there with the Hoffa. To me, like, obviously Hoffa was one of the most polarizing figures there was. A lot of eyes on him, and for him to just fucking vanish. And we're now, what, 40, 30 some odd years, nobody even has a clue where he's at. He's never been found. You know, there's all kinds of inclinations to where he might be or where he could be, but nobody knows for sure. Whoever done it right, and they kept their mouth. And I'm not glorifying that they did this, but I'm just saying they done it the correct way, and nobody found out about it, and they kept their mouth shut. And that is a rarity in anything.
No, I agree, especially when it starts to balloon out like that. You know, it's like, there's plenty of cases where there's 1 or 2 people involved, there's a murder, and they don't talk, because like obviously they don't want to go to like prison for the rest of their lives, you know, unless they have like a serious conscience. But like the bigger the circle gets, the harder it is to keep everyone, like, you know.
Right. And you got to figure if the mob had something to do with it, like it's been long, you know, thought of that they had something. I mean, there wasn't just 1 or 2 people. that knew that was going down. There had to be a lot of people in the mix. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Irishman. Frank Sheeran
Yeah, I did
supposedly
actually. Yeah,
does it. A
yeah,
lot of people said that they don't buy that Frank did it. If it went down in Detroit, a lot of people think that other people had something to do with it there. So I mean, there's all kind of different theories, but you know, hell, who knows? But whatever happened, they done it the right way because nobody has a fucking clue.
right. Yeah,
Um, and getting back to the Son of Sam too, that's all. Isn't he like religious now in jail or something
yeah.
like that?
He's got a website that's just filled with like, you know, that's one of the interesting things about doing this kind of work. So you can just go down a wormhole after wormhole
Yeah,
after wormhole. Yeah, but like Berkowitz, yeah, he's got a website that's filled with all this religious stuff. And he and Carl actually even started writing each other letters for a while, which are in the book actually, where
wow.
Berkowitz comes really close a whole bunch of times to like actually saying something, but he never does. But that's what the
Yeah,
guy's been doing for
yeah,
like the whole time anyway. You know, he's very cagey, like, and that's the thing. You either got to look at it like, so when they arrested him, there's like, you know,
smiling.
in his apartment, there's all this shit scribbled on the walls, like, you know, about what the stuff the dog's telling him to do, and like all these weird little poems. And they would leave like little weird letters they taunt like people in the press and so on and so
Yeah,
forth. You know,
chubby
so like if
behemoth or
you're
whatever.
yeah, so many people are obviously like, yeah, this guy's just totally batshit crazy. But there's just as many people that believe that it's all an act, you know. Like who knows, man? I mean, it's like, you know, that's one of the things about this kind of stuff is like I'm not even really supposed to have like a real opinion. Like my job's like to
Right.
help Kyle present his story.
Yeah, you present their story and other people form their own opinions.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
those cases, man, like that and like the Zodiac have always just been one that fascinated me because, like, how can you do as much stuff as they did or claim to be and, you know, never get caught? I mean, I think I did see something not too long ago where they said they thought they identified him, but I mean, obviously the
Zodiac,
guy's
man. It's
dead. I
like
mean,
that's like I just got an email from this woman like the other day. It was like, because I get this is the same thing I was talking about. You go to a bar and it's like, oh, here it goes. Like, it's like she claimed she'd solved all these ciphers, you know, that he wrote all these, you
yeah.
know, and she knew who it was and so on and so forth. It's like, yeah, I don't think that one's ever gonna
No, I
get
think there was
figured
even
out.
like a guy that claimed like the Zodiac was his dad or some shit like that and had like a
Oh
big
yeah, that's right.
website. And yeah,
Yeah,
that was proven, I think, be debunked too. But I mean, you know, it's like the DB Cooper, same thing with DB Cooper. That's one of those things that, you know, we'll never probably know the answer to. Did he live? Did he make it? You know, I don't know if you're familiar with that case, but you know,
totally. No, yeah,
only
well, totally,
successful
man.
hijacking. Well, I say successful. He at least got out of the plane. That it can't verify that he lived after that, but you know he hijacked it. He got the money, and I think they
Right.
found some of it years later. There was like a family vacationing, and a kid was
I
like
think you're right. Yeah.
Geiger counter, whatever you know, what the shit where they scan the ground. I can't even think of the name of it, but he found like a stack of I don't know if it was 20s or what it was or fives. It was like 10, 15 grand in a bundle, and the bundle come from that money because I think they did trace it before they give it to him. And that's the thing is none of the other bills has turned up in circulation, so they say, which leads them to think that he didn't make it and he didn't die because
Yeah.
why go through all that trouble to rob him if you're not going to spend the money?
Right. When did that happen again? Do you
That
remember?
was probably, man, I don't know. I'd have to Google it to say. I would probably
Yeah,
say
yeah, I would
70s.
too.
I would
Yeah,
probably
because
have to
I
say
mean,
70s.
I'm obviously older than you, man, but I can remember being like I think I was like a kid, or at least in high school or something when that happened. Because it was huge back then.
Oh, yeah. They
It was
made a
like everyone was
movie.
talking about it.
I'm going to actually Google it really quick. 71. Yep.
All right,
71. I
yeah,
was
okay, that
close.
happened when I was really, yeah,
Yeah. I was nowhere near born.
yeah, I was barely born. Yeah,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
still,
it's always
the fact that we're talking about it like 50 years later, man,
right.
is
Yeah.
like
And it's
that's
just one of those things that because it's never solved, you're always going to
right.
have those people. Well, did he make it? Did he not? And I mean, to me, the fact that he got away with it, I don't even think if those bills did turn up in circulation, the government would admit to it because they don't want to admit that somebody bested him. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Totally. Totally.
Well, Brian, man, I've had a good time on this episode, man. I hope everybody has enjoyed it as well. I hope they're looking for the book coming out with Slava, Bad Trips. That's what it's called, correct?
Yeah. Thanks, brother. I had a good time too.
Yeah, no problem. And look into his other stuff. The Cannibal Cop is one of them I want to go check out. I want to watch that damn doc. That's got
Yeah,
me.
I'm actually, we were talking basketball before we got on. Like one of the pools I'm in, I got in with the Cannibal. He had a good pool. So one of the pools I'm in is like the Cannibal Cop.
Hell, I'm going to just agree with whatever he says. I ain't going to disagree. Oh, you got Richmond going all the way, huh? Yeah, Tim Ford. That's
yeah, totally.
Go Spiders.
Right on.
Well, man, look here. I'm glad you can stop by the show. You're welcome back anytime. We can shoot the shit, talk about anything, any projects you have coming up. I'll definitely get that guy's info when you get off the air. But
yeah, for sure.
Definitely want to say thank you for stopping by. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Hollywood Wade. This was Brian Whitney, and unfortunately, we are out of time. Tune in next week for an all-new episode of Crime and Entertainment. Brian, thank you, my friend.
Thanks, brother.